Hi, I'm Reverend Tom Kearns, and welcome to 333 Magic 9, where the tarot cards and stars come together to help you. 2021 is going to be quite a different year than last year, but there still are some critical days you need to know about because they can affect your love, your money, and your career. So let's take a closer look. The card for the first quarter of the year, January, February, March, is the Three of Wands. Now, the Three of Wands is looking out into the distance, so he's looking to the future and he's seeing the possibilities that are there. He's seeing that there is a lot of opportunities that lie ahead and maybe even some challenges, but look at him. He doesn't seem to be perturbed or bothered by that. He's ready for it. He's open to it. And so that's a very good way to start the year. And perhaps it may reflect the change that has gone on, especially with Saturn and Jupiter, which are now separating through the month of January. Now, last year, the end of the year, Jupiter, Saturn, Pluto sort of broke up their conjunction. Jupiter had been in Capricorn for the past year, Saturn for 2.5 years, and Pluto since 2008. And this has really been the heavy hand that has been on the world, the problems with government, the problems with the pandemic, all of that. That combination hadn't happened for thousands of years, basically. Very, very heavy-handed. But that is breaking up. And now we have Jupiter moving forward into Aquarius and Saturn moving forward into Aquarius, and they're even separating from one another. Now, this suggests, and especially up in the ninth house here, that you need to have a balance between enthusiasm and reality and what you believe and what your ambitions are. What do you see as your future? So that needs to be balanced out. You can't just have hopes, wishes, and dreams. You need to have some reality, some plan behind it. So try to do that and you'll be more successful. Now, as we move into the month, Mars squares Saturn on the 13th. Now, the square to Saturn is from down here. You see Mars just going into Taurus and squaring Saturn. Now, that's always a difficult square. And it might represent that some other people have different beliefs than you do, and you need to be aware of that, and you need to be accepting of that. You don't want to be frustrated, you don't want to be delayed, but sometimes you just have to back off a little bit, and that'll make things easier for you. On the 14th of the month, Uranus, right here in your 12th house of spirituality, will be turning direction. So that will bring, he's going direct, and that will bring perhaps new opportunity and changes internally and spiritually. You'll be able to perhaps see some of the limitations you have put on yourself and be able to deal with them in a very positive manner. As we move forward, there is just a very major aspect. Mars is going to be with Uranus, and both are going to be squared by Jupiter. This is a very powerful square. I mean, just Mars and Uranus together alone, when they are conjunct, that's very powerful. And people tend to be willful and erratic. And there can be some very, genius things that happen, creative things that happen. But the square to Jupiter sort of tells you better limit yourself a little bit because you might be believing so much that you could fly yourself to the moon, and when you get out of the atmosphere you got big trouble because you forgot your oxygen tanks. So don't push the river too far because you might run into some big walls. So squares are challenges. Challenges can be useful as long as you use them in a positive fashion. On the 30th of January, Mercury, and he's this blue line here, is going to be going retrograde, and he'll stay retrograde until the 21st. Now, again, this is up in the ninth house of understanding. So it tells you to be a little bit careful about your beliefs versus other people's beliefs and how you communicate with other people, especially in that area. And also, this is an area that deals with long distance travel, and when Mercury's retrograde, you got to be a little bit careful to make sure you know where you're going. It's a safe place. Make sure you've planned everything out well, and make sure you check all the details. Otherwise, you might be standing out on a beach someplace with no way to get home. Now, when we get into February, the biggie happens that when Saturn squares Uranus, and this will be on the 18th of February. So Saturn will be up here again in the ninth house, and he will be squaring Uranus. Now, Saturn and Uranus are not very friendly. Uranus represents the future. Saturn represents the present and past. So there's always a little bit of a fight between the two of them. And this is a house of spirituality and things going on behind the scenes, limitations, and this is a house of belief. So your beliefs might run into some spiritual difficulties or some limitations that you weren't expecting, because Uranus rules unexpected things, unexpected events, unexpected people. So you might have some really fabulous experiences. Listen closely to your dreams, but do not just see them as being fearful, because one of the things that the 12th house deals with is eliminating your fears, seeing them, eliminating, and it can be very healthy. In March, Venus will move into Aries. So here is the sign of Aries. This is the 11th house, and that's very good for dealing with groups of people. Venus is not necessarily the happiest in Aries, because Aries is a little bit too independent for Venus's nature, but that's okay. You can get along with that. So just remember to be gentle when you're going into groups of people, especially if there's new people you don't know. Test the waters a little bit. Don't just jump in. Okay, as we move ahead to the second quarter, and that is April, May, and June, the card for that quarter is the Seven of Pentacles. Now, this is an energy that is sort of slows down, it hesitates, it wants to look, it wants to understand how to use all of these resources that have been collected together. But it's not quite ready to do so. So again, there may be this sense of needing to plan. Now, the first aspect that really is somewhat difficult in April is Mars square Neptune. So Mars is here, the red line, and Neptune is up there in your 10th house. So when Mars squares Neptune, you have to be careful not to be too much of a believer or believing everything that you hear. You have to be looking for the truth, but sometimes the truth is muddled, especially with Mars and Neptune. However, that can be a very creative energy if you are a creative type of person. But you have to understand what your boundaries are and don't try to push them. Be careful with money, be careful with your resources, and use your talents well. Mercury and Venus will conjunct Uranus. Now, Mercury is the blue line, the dark blue. Venus is the light blue, and there is Uranus in the 12th house. And this can be a very imaginative time, a very communicative time. But again, the 12th house is things behind the scenes, the subconscious mind, the superconscious mind, spirituality. So you may have some visionary experiences or imaginative experiences. There also might be a lot of internal talking going on. So listen closely to your dreams, but don't get carried away until they prove themselves to be somewhat real. Now, the next aspect we have is Jupiter entering into Pisces. Now, that is up into your 10th house, and that's really good news. This is the first time in 12 years that Jupiter will be in Pisces. And Jupiter is expansive and opportunity, and Jupiter is the king of the gods. And in Pisces, he's happy. He likes being in the sign of Pisces. He used to rule that sign until we found Neptune. So take advantage of opportunities that come your way. Now, you might want to, make sure that they're built on reality, because Pisces can be a little bit wishy-washy here. But he does increase your ability to be sensitive, to be intuitive. So follow your intuition in your career, and also be sensitive to others. You also have this healing energy that may be in your career area. So if you've had problems in that area, you might be able to work them out in a very positive manner. So follow your new creative ideas. And on the last week of May, we have both Mercury, that's Mercury right there, and Saturn, both going retrograde. Now, this is a time to review what you believe. The ninth house is beliefs and ambitions. What are your ambitions? You might have to review that so you know where you're going and what kind of structures that you've built in your life that may have to be adjusted in some way so that you can get ahead. It's very important, especially with Mercury and Saturn involved and both going retrograde, use logic. and if you need to be helpful to other people, please do so. Just don't let them take too much from you. As we move into June, we will find that there is going to be a Pluto in the 8th house in opposition to Mars down here in the 2nd house. Now, this is really an important and powerful opposition. Since Pluto is in the 8th house of shared energy and sensuality and rebirth, and Mars is in opposition to that. You have to be very careful with your energy, with your ego, with your sensuality. Don't be too pushy, don't be manipulative, and do not let others manipulate you, either sensually or materially. Mercury then will go direct in the sign of Gemini, which is good news. Because when Mercury is in its own sign and it's retrograde, it can be really messy. So as Mercury goes direct in the 1st house, you'll be able to express yourself, because this is your planet, it's your sign, and this is the planet of communications. So you might find a lot of things clearing up, a lot of things straightening out. You might have the opportunity to travel. So this is a really good omen for you. Then on the 20th of June and then the 25th, Jupiter and Neptune both go retrograde. There's Neptune there, and there's Jupiter in the sign of Pisces. Now, this is really important because this is a powerful energy. Both Neptune and Jupiter are powerful in Pisces, and when something goes retrograde, it means you need clarity. And so on a sensual level, on a psychic level, and since it's happening up here in the 10th house of career, you have to be a little bit extra careful. Just watch your P's and Q's, and don't mess with people you shouldn't mess with, and don't trust everything that you hear. People tend to exaggerate, especially when Jupiter is involved. As we move into the 3rd quarter, the card is the Lovers. Woohoo! That's a great card. Now, part of the reason for this is that Venus and Mars will be traveling together, but we'll talk about that in a minute. But the 2 of Cups here represents really positive energy with just about anything dealing with partnerships, relationships, sensuality, love. So you can make some very good connections when the 2 of Cups are involved. So as we move into July, the first major aspect that we're going to get is going to be a Mars Uranus square. So here is Uranus here, and Mars is down here. So the square between them is one that really enhances willfulness, pushiness, independence. So you're going to have to be a little bit careful, and since Uranus is in the 12th house, that can stimulate your fear nature and your limitations, your subconscious fears. You might have some weird dreams. Don't let them throw you. It's a passing thing. And don't let yourself get out of control. Don't be too sensual. Don't be too pushy. Then we're going to find Jupiter and Saturn. There's Jupiter, there's Saturn, and they're both going to be going retrograde. So that suggests that, and you know, interesting, Jupiter's in the house of career here, and Saturn is in the house of ambition. Now, anytime both Jupiter and Saturn are involved, it has something to do with business, with expansion, but also with practicality and reality, which is Saturn. So you're going to have to maybe reevaluate your ambitions and what's going on in your career. So don't be surprised if you have to make some adjustments. Also be careful with money. Now then, Venus and Mars will be together. Remember the lovers, they're going to be moving together here. There's Venus, the blue, the powder blue line, and Mars is the red line. And they're going to be moving together, and that's really very good because this month they're going to be in Leo, which is great for them because Leo loves to be expressive, and Venus and Mars are the planets of love and creativity. So that's a really great potential. So do your creative thing, do your romantic thing. Just understand there may be some strange energies around because of there's a square both from Venus and Mars to Uranus. So be just a little bit cautious. Don't go, jumping off of any bridges without looking first, unless you have one of those bungee cords on you. Then it can be an adventure. So the next month in August, Venus and Mars are still moving together. However, now they're going to be in the sign of Virgo. Now, Virgo is not the happiest place for either Venus or for Mars. The energy of Mars is sublimated there, and the Venus is just too nice for the criticalness of Virgo. So try not to be critical. Lovers just, don't like being criticized. They want to be told how good they are. So if you remember that, you can see the good in people rather than criticizing, and then you won't have to buy anybody flowers unless you really want to, and then there might be a payoff. Whew. On the 19th, Uranus, right there, is going to go retrograde. So Uranus being in the sign of Taurus is in a fixed sign, so it has to remain flexible. So don't get your, hackles up. Don't let your fears overcome your common sense, because you really need to keep an eye on what's going on in your subconscious and in your dreams and in your intuitions. Don't be blown away by things that might never occur. That's what we call unfounded fears. So you got to keep an eye, because Uranus is in Taurus, and Taurus rules the markets and also banking. So you got to keep an eye on those things, on your investments, on your money, and make sure you cross the dots and cross the T's and put the dots on top of the I's. And that way, if you're watching everything detailed, which Virgo energy can do, that's a good use of the energy. In September, this is really interesting. Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto are all retrograde. They're all going to be going backwards. So that says adjustment, adjustment, adjustment. So make any adjustments that you need to. This is a good time to review what you've done so far this year and see what changes that you might have to make. Now, it's really interesting. I mean, that's like half of all the planets. And then At the very end of the month, the 27th, Mercury goes retrograde. So this can be really difficult in romance and creative projects. Make sure you know what you're saying. Don't get into fights with people. Don't be again like this the pushiness where you have to say what you believe no matter what. That's not going to work. So always try to keep yourself a little bit flexible and be willing to revise your plans because you'll get further ahead. As we go into the fourth quarter, the card is the King of Swords. Now, the King of Swords is a card of strength, of power, of logic. So if you look at this whole year and even 2020, which sets this year 2021 up, we've gone through an awful lot. Everyone has gone through an awful lot. So we need the strength of the King of Swords. However, we also may be now in a better position than we were at the beginning of the year. So what we have to do is look at the world through logical eyes, see where we are, see where we want to go, and maintain our balanced approach. So this is the October, November, December time period, and this is a time that we can now move ahead because after all the other retrograde planets, some of them now start moving forward. So Pluto, Saturn, Jupiter, and Mercury all turn direct this month. So this should help business, this should help communications, and help you if you have to make any changes personally. So there is a big aspect when Jupiter and Mercury come together, and that'll be on October 18th. So Mercury is sort of like the logical mind, and Jupiter is the abstract mind. So you may come up with some very good ideas when those two come together, and there may be some practical ways to use it. So don't miss that opportunity. In November, there is a magical number, 1111. That's a magical number in tarot, in mythical things. Every 1111, any double number like that, but especially 1111 because it's also a spiritual number, and it's related to one of the tarot cards. I don't want to get into that, but let's just say that on 1111 there is a Mars Saturn square. So what you're going to have to be aware of is limitations. This is always a frustrating energy. Mars wants to jump ahead and Saturn says stop. So you're going to have to be aware that you're going to have to be logical in your approach. Otherwise, you're going to run into frustration. And again, that would specifically be in the area of beliefs or ambitions. So you have to know where you want to go. Mars wants to go, but Saturn just wants you to think about it and make sure it's practical. Again, don't jump off any bridges. Now, in December, Neptune goes direct. So that helps clear up some emotional issues. It might help in the career area. It's in the 10th house. You may have some very vivid, creative ideas or imaginings that actually can be useful, because imagination is a powerful thing when it's used properly. And there's also a good aspect of Venus that'll be helping that out. So you might actually run into something romantic, and it might be connected to work. So just be careful. Then on the 19th, Venus, the blue line here, will go retrograde, and that is right on top of a conjunction that she has made with Pluto. Now, this is really important because it's in the 8th house. Pluto rules that house. Pluto deals with death and resurrection and sexuality and manipulation. And Venus is love and kindness and things like that. So be very cautious with who you lend money to or who is maybe trying to influence you or even maybe manipulate you, and do not do that to others as well. Otherwise, this can cause a little bit of trouble, and you don't want any trouble. And finally, Jupiter will go into Pisces. Jupiter's the green guy right up here in the top, and this is the house of career. So this is the first time in 12 years that Jupiter is going to be going into Pisces. This increases your opportunities. It increases your imagination, your creativity, and that can be used in the house of career. So you're going to have Jupiter and Neptune in Pisces in the career and status area. So use your creativity, use your sensitivity, use your healing ability. That will help get you ahead. The only thing I would caution is this is happening on the 30th, just before New Year's. So be careful not to overindulge too much and partying and eating, drinking, and things of that nature. So be a little cautious with the over expansiveness of Jupiter. Take advantage of the good fortune of Jupiter, but keep it under control and have a fabulous new year. Hi, I'm Reverend Tom Kearns, and this is my story. If you are a spiritual seeker, it may help you on your journey. I believe your spiritual development is as important as your religion. If you look at Christianity, it focuses on the life of Jesus. But Jesus was never a Christian. He was Jewish. If this thought intrigues you, you'll enjoy my new book, Light from Water, Freeing Jesus. It's available on Amazon.com and through fine bookstores. And it may help you on your spiritual journey. I'd like to thank you for watching and thank you for listening. Remember to subscribe because these videos are free, and hit the little bell for notifications. And for a special offer, visit my website, internetpsychicreadings.com.